Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Metropolitan Governance Task Force for this Wednesday, the 29th. And very excited about our agenda today. We're going to be digging in deeper on the issue of councils of governments. And we have one in Denver that we are familiar with and want to hear more from. And but before we get into that, we want to adopt our previous meeting's minutes. Do we have a motion on that? Okay. We have a motion from Senator Pratt. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the motion prevails. So I did want to give everyone an update on our public engagement meetings and really appreciate the work that several members of the task force have done. Ms. Beckman, Commissioner Bingham, Representative Weens have all been very engaged with this. And of course, Ms. Kohler has done an amazing job. So all of these meetings are set, and we've agreed on a format for these. And as we get closer, our first one's going to be a week from Friday here in St. Paul at the Wilder Foundation in the afternoon. You will be receiving information on how to log in and how to attend if you'd like to attend in person. But per the wording of our the legislation, we do have the option again of people attending in person at the site or gathering here at the Capitol. And Ms. Kohler will be in contact with you. Oh, and I also wanted to thank Senator Pratt for his work in helping us get together a meeting in Scott County on January 9th, and Ms. Paddock has helped give some advice about our meeting in Minneapolis. So we're going to be working through all of those and our agendas, but we've spent the bulk of our time really over the last couple of weeks trying to finalize our December meetings in St. Paul and in Lake Elmo. So thank you again to the members who have stepped up on that. I also wanted to mention that we have several members joining us online: Senator Dibble, Mr. Reed, Senator Port, Representative Kosnick, and Ms. Pira Webb is joining us as well.
Senator Coleman.
Oh, Senator Coleman has joined us as well. So welcome, Senator Coleman. So we have really good attendance today, split between people in person and joining us remotely. So with that, members, the remainder of our agenda will really focus on Denver. And just to preview this, Denver is considered sort of a peer region to ours. Similar to Portland, though, of course, no region is the same, and geography is different. And there's, we have the Front Range of the Rockies, of course. There, a geographic feature that we don't have here in Minnesota. But in terms of population growth, there are some similarities. And the other thing that's intriguing about Denver, in Denver area, is that they have a separate transit authority that is not part of the regional government there, and it does happen to be elected. So you have a very interesting model here in Denver that we're going to dig into. Again, a council of governments that includes counties and cities and mayors, and then you have a separate elected transit agency there. So what we'll do is first call on Doug Rex, who is the executive director of the Denver Regional Council of Governments, known as DRCOG. I always like saying that. And then Ron Papsdorf, who's the Transportation Planning and Operations Director. So they'll give a short PowerPoint presentation and then take questions. So let's proceed here, and I'd like to welcome Doug Rex and Ron Papsdorf. What we do here is ask those testifying before the task force to state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony. And we have you up on two different large screens in our room here at the Minnesota State Capitol.
Thank you, sir, very much. Mr. Chairman, members of the task force, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. As you did mention, my name is Doug Rex. I'm the Executive Director of the Denver Regional Council of Governments, or most commonly known as DRCOG, which is, as you suggest, a great acronym. And we love it, and we love saying it as well. I'm joined today by Ron Papsdorf. He's our Director of Transportation Planning and Operations, and he'll be available for any questions you might have. Or I'm sure he'll kick me under the virtual table if I say something I'm not supposed to. But as you mentioned, I do have a short slide deck that I wanted to share just to kind of keep focused on the mission here. So if I may do so, I am going to share my screen. Just one sec. Okay, is that in presentation mode?
Yeah, we can see it pretty well.
Okay, great. Great, thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned, you know, and I'm sure you've obviously recognized this in your research, that councils of governments, we're like fingerprints, right? I mean, that, you know, we were founded for particular purposes back in the day and have evolved to meet the
Oh, just 1 second,
yeah.
Mr. X. If you could just move a little bit closer to the mic. We can hear you, but I think a little bit louder on the volume would be good.
How's that?
I think better, I think.
Okay. Well, I'll try to project a little better.
Okay.
Okay now?
Yeah. It's
All
not
right.
bad, but you know, just a little bit louder, I think is good.
No, I understand. Thank you, sir. Please let me know.
Okay.
So a little bit about our region. We're a pretty big region. We represent about 5,200, 5,300 square miles. We're a very diverse region. Both geographically, we have the foothills. We run right up to the Continental Divide in Clear Creek County. So we have the foothills, as well as we have the Eastern Plains out in Adams and Arapahoe County. And we're very, very diverse politically as well, right? We truly are a purple region and a purple state. And that diversity, I think, it's important. It's important for us to acknowledge the differences that we have if we're to move forward. So we're really appreciative of the collaboration and the conversations that we have around the DRCOG table. With regards to what we do, and I'm sure some of these will look familiar and some of them won't, right? So we really only have three core missions at DRCOG. The first that have been established by either state or federal statute. So the first one, we are defined as the Regional Planning Commission, and that was created by state statute. And basically what that requires is DRCOG to prepare a plan for the physical growth and development of our region. We refer to that plan as MetroVision, and it is kind of our guiding document that basically everything else feeds into. And I'll talk real quickly about that here in a second. We are also designated by the federal government as the Area Agency on Aging. And what that really does is basically we are responsible for allocating funding to community-based organizations within our region to make sure that our older adults are being treated the way we expect them to be treated. We provide nutrition services, transportation services, in-home services, as well as a dozen other services as required through the Older Americans Act and the Older Coloradans Act. And last but certainly not least is we are defined as by federal statute as the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the Denver region. Like Met Council, we are responsible for the development of a long and short range transportation plan. And it was really, quite frankly, where DRCOG kind of cut his teeth back in the day. I mean, that's really how we were formed back in the day, was related to transportation planning. So just a real quick history on DRCOG, because we're proud of it. We're the third oldest councils of governments in the country. We were formed in 1955 when the Denver mayor at the time, Mayor Quig Newton, reached out and requested a summit with the neighboring counties because this was, there was a tremendous amount of growth post World War II, and I think he recognized right away that this is not something that the region that he, the city county of Denver, could plan in a vacuum, that the importance of regional collaboration in a time of that significant growth was paramount. So out of that meeting became the Denver Regional Council of Governments, and that was fabulous. And in part, it was the transportation issues that seem to be propping up as a result of the influx of the immigration in the region. And the DRCOG created its first transportation plan in 1958. And I won't go through all of these, but but basically, we have milestones throughout the life of DRCOG in this region, which we're very proud of. RTD, the formation of RTD in 1969 was a very important landmark for us. Metropolitan, our transit services within this region prior to that was in part being served by this city county of Denver itself. And then I had mentioned the AAA. We were formally designated AAA in 1973, so we've been doing that for a tremendous amount of time. And in 1977, we received our ultimate designation as the MPO, which is ironic because, of course, as I mentioned, that's kind of how we originated back in ¡55. Little bit now about ourselves as a regional collaboration. So we're a voluntary association of local governments, and we have 58 members. So that's pretty unique for the size of our region. I know Met Council, for example, has many more local governments than we do in its geographic boundaries. It's unique in that because we only have 58 local governments, the table is still big enough that we can allow all communities to have a seat at the table. We do not have, proxy voting like you'll see in some of the larger regions, like North Central Texas COG, NCT COG, or the Houston, Galveston area, for example. Those and most have this where they do like a general assembly and then they select representatives to represent various regions and districts of the Council of Governments. We don't do that. We have one entity, one vote at the DRCOG table. So that is very unique. And I think that is truly what the genius of DRCOG is. It is that it is the only time that 58 local governments in our area get together and discuss anything. And I think that's pretty darn cool, to be quite honest with you. And I think, the topics is really irrelevant, although, of course, we kind of stay related to our core missions. But it is. It's a great. It works out really well, and we're happy we have it. So a little bit about our mission. Everybody has a mission statement, of course, and I will say that the DRCOG board, they worked really hard in making sure we carry out this mission. We have, I believe, a pretty tremendous onboarding process for them, and I think they understand the importance of the role that they play in our region. And the board is truly committed to speaking with one voice on decisions that occur around the DRCOG board table. And as the executive director, that's something I can truly appreciate. All right, just a little bit about who we are and what we do. And I know you all know this, is that regional conversations require partnerships, and it's all what we do, quite frankly. And I kind of joke with people through the years that I always consider myself the director of agendas, because it seems like we have meetings for everything. But that's the role we play in our region. And because we don't pass regulations, we don't pass laws, anything like that. We are truly a table, and we hopefully we can facilitate multiple viewpoints and get to where we want to go as a region. We consider ourselves the university and not the police station, and so we spend a lot of time preparing documents and what have you, looking at best practices, really providing a menu of options for our local governments to implement, so that we can all move our mission forwards. Excuse me. Just speaking, more formally about our process, I mean, we do have a pretty regimented process, and I did mention MetroVision Plan, which is kind of our shared vision for what the Denver region will look like in some future year. And it in that MetroVision Plan, it has several outcomes that we're anticipating, and all of our work really stems on making sure that comes to fruition. So the MPO function, as you'll see, in the flow chart, the three other levels here are related to our metropolitan planning work, where our MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan, which is a vision for our transportation system, is created in part based on the outcomes of MetroVision, and then our fiscally constrained plan, and then our short-range plan, our transportation improvement program, are picked exclusively to make sure that we fulfill that mission of MetroVision. MetroVision, just one more slide, just to kind of bring this home. We do have 5 overarching themes associated with it. It's a very strategic plan. It's not like a typical comprehensive plan, at least ones that we've created through the years. It's very strategic in the fact that we've identified strategic initiatives in the plan that, if implemented, will carry out each of these overarching themes. And it's a menu, right? Some communities may feel very comfortable with doing some of the initiatives, and some other communities might feel comfortable with doing the others. But there is a commitment from our board and our member local governments that they will indeed implement some, if not all, of those initiatives. And we remind them of that periodically. We have established targets as part of our MetroVision plan that each year we bring to the board an update and show basically where we are on the trajectory of those targets. So I'll give you an example. So we want to reduce vehicle miles traveled by a certain percent between now and the year 2040. So every year we come to them with the latest data and basically show it on a graph whether we're exceeding that target or not. And if not, then we have a conversation about why and what we can do to improve that. All right, a little bit on our governance itself. I had mentioned we have 58 participating member governments. Each has an elected official as its representative on our board. The governor also appoints 3 non-voting representatives. And those are right now, the Colorado Department of Transportation has 1 vote. There's someone from the governor's office, and I can't remember. The third one is not filled right now. The Regional Transportation District, RTD, I know you'll hear from CEO Johnson here in a little bit. They're a non-voting representative on our board, but they do have a stronger voice than that, which I'll explain on the next slide. But they are represented at the table. We meet monthly. We actually reserve the right to have 2 meetings a month. We do our business meeting on the 3rd Wednesday of each month, but we also reserve the right to have a board work session on the 1st Wednesday of the month, which is held virtually. They appoint the executive director, which I'm certainly glad they do, and they adopt, obviously, they have an administrative function within our agency, adopt the budget, as well as approve and adopt plans, policies, and funding allocations in compliance with federal and state laws. Okay, this is my last slide. Whoops, where'd it go? It's my last slide, and it's a little deeper dive into our governance process related to our metropolitan planning organization function. And I'm going to I'll start at the bottom. So we do have, as you can imagine, as Met Council I'm sure does, every MPO does, we have various work groups and advisory committees and the like that help and advise and provide feedback to what our 3 core committees. So the first one's our Transportation Advisory Committee, which by federal law we're required to have is a technical committee of local government staff, and they're kind of the bullpen group. They really do the meat and potatoes work in forming recommendations, And then those are discussed and ultimately voted on by two committees of DRCOG. The first is called the Regional Transportation Commission, Regional Transportation Committee. And this is very unique to us. I don't know how many other COGs have this, but this is a committee which is mostly made up of the three formal partners of the MPO, and that is DRCOG, CDOT, Colorado Department of Transportation, and RTD. We also have other members as well, one representing business interests, other representing other transportation interests and housing interests and the like. So there are other members, but the core of that committee is made up of the three members of the MPO. And they make a recommendation ultimately to the DRCOG board for their approval. But where it really is unique to us, and I think pretty neat, is that the action that the board ultimately takes has to have been the exact same action that was passed by the Regional Transportation Committee. If the board changes that action, then it has to loop back to the Regional Transportation Committee for their, I guess, the approval of the change. So I think, it really shows the transparency in our process. And I think ultimately it really hopes that we can build consensus that way and arrive at a decision that everybody feels comfortable with. What else? There was something else I was going to say about that. No, I think I was going to mention the board of directors. So our board of directors is made up of more than the membership of the Metropolitan Planning Organization. I should have mentioned this on the map that I showed, but we have different geographies in the DRCOG region. So the DRCOG region is larger than the MPO region or area, but so the board members that lay outside the MPO still have a vote at the table because one, decisions that are made within the Metropolitan Planning Organization clearly affect them out on the perimeters. But also, I think it's an opportunity for those directors and local governments outside the MPO. They serve as kind of a check and balance, really, for the members of the MPO because they're looking at it from a different perspective. That I think that's something that the board really does appreciate. So, with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm here to answer any questions you might have. Like I said, Ron Papsdorf is also here. If you have any questions about any of our governments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any questions, Senator Pratt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Rex. Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions. Mr. Rex, your metropolitan area is roughly about the same size as ours. Our council is 16 districts. One of the concerns I have is if we talk about expansion, the worry that the council become too big to be effective. Yours is much bigger. Can you maybe talk about that dynamic? And then the other concern we hear, if you could touch on it as well, is if we have locally elected officials, they'll be parochial to their own areas. How have you worked around that?
Mr. Rex.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir. And thank you, sir, for the question. Yeah, I will say so. Yeah, I think we really we're hitting that upper limit with regards to the number of seats at the table, right, that you would feel comfortable having. And listen, a board of that size, it has its faults and its promises, right? I think some of it is really good that the fact that every local government has a voice at the table, and I think they appreciate that, regardless of size, right? You have, City County Denver there with, a small community of a couple hundred in Deerfield. And I think, there's opportunity for them to learn from each other for sure about, about ways in which things are done. So I think we as staff really appreciate that we, can have relationships with all of our local governments. But it does take more time for sure, right, to arrive at decisions. I'll speak, specifically to the passing of our Metro Vision Plan back in 2017 was the last time that was adopted unanimously. And it took some time, and there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but, just understanding that, going in, that, more work is required to get to those final outcomes, I think it's worth noting.
Thank you. Follow-up, Senator Pratt.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. It was interesting on your slide 10 that you approve or adopt plans, policies, and funding allocations. And I'm wondering, one of the issues that I hear from cities and counties is that the Metropolitan Council has too much authority in local decisions. And I'm wondering, what's your role in approving those plans? How do you avoid conflict, or how do you deal with conflict when those arise?
Excellent question, Mr. Rex.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, Senator, thank you again for the question. We are required by federal law to approve, as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, to approve various plans and policies, right, that relate to our work as the Metropolitan Planning Organization. So I think going in, they understand what their role is associated with that. I would suggest that our member directors, they collaborate with staff at their level to make sure that there's a comfort level with approving various plans that we put in front of them. And ultimately, I think they're well versed by the time they get to the table and understand the issues. But if there are specific issues, of course, we as staff, reach out to our member director as well as their staffs to make sure that they feel comfortable ultimately with the outcome, or not, right? I mean, ultimately, they don't have to vote yes on everything, but we always like to get to a point where we're able to reach consensus.
Thank you. So I have Professor Orfield, Commissioner Bingham, and Mr. Rockwell on the list so far. And then we'll have, a couple more after that. Okay, Professor Orfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was noticing, I came in a touch late, but I was noticing you said you're not a regulator, that you are a university. And our Met Council has the power to approve local comprehensive plans and the power to increase density if it would like to use that power. Do you think, just as a matter of principle, that having the power to approve comprehensive plans and increase density, for example, around transit areas, do you think that would be useful to transportation planning in general, based on your expertise as a MPO official?
Mr. X.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question. Well, I'll be honest. I don't know if I feel comfortable answering that. I don't know if I have the background to really do that. I will say that, we're in the process right now of doing a regional housing assessment in our region, and some of the conversations we're having is around the necessity to increase density within certain corridors, most notably around fixed rail transit and others. And for whatever reason, I think, quite frankly, cities have already, they've already changed land use in order to already, affect that type of change anyway. So I mean, would it be useful? I don't know. It can and can't. I think it's probably efficient to do it that way, but yeah, I don't know if I could speak to it directly.
Professor Orfield.
Just to follow up, I mean, one of the goals that you're suggesting is that as suburbs reinvent themselves, as we think about transit options, that we need to have density. We need to be able to increase density along these transit lines. And you're agnostic about whether a regulatory agency should have that, and perhaps it's a sensitive issue. But just the idea of increasing density, to be able to increase density as places redevelop along transit lines, just as a principle, whether it has legal power or not, that's a good principle, isn't it?
I would think so. Yeah, I think it's intuitive in most cases that, it makes more sense that within transit nodes that, increased density would therefore increase ridership.
Thank you, Professor. Commissioner Bingham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, it's clear that every one of the 58 cities, counties, and towns and partner agencies are on the council that are within the region. But what isn't clear to me, and maybe I just didn't pick up on it in the presentation, but so that's the board of directors. But how are those various members assigned to committees? And is that where a lot of the, work is done? And how do you assign the roles on those committees through the 58 members, or are all 58 members on each of these committees?
No. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question. It's a great question, actually. I did not get into our subcommittee process, and I probably should have. So we do have a number of committees and regional committees that we serve on. With internal to DRCOG, there are 3 opportunities for members to serve. There's the Regional Transportation Committee, which I showed you in the spreadsheet. There's the Finance and Budget Committee, and there's a committee called the Performance and Engagement Committee, which primarily is responsible for the evaluation of the executive director, as well as increasing collaboration and engagement of the board. So they take that role very seriously, and we try to implement things throughout the year to try to make sure that the board is more engaged with each other as we move forward. Though any regional committee, internal, external, that we have a member on, that those members, we solicit members to be on those committees, and they submit their names, and ultimately the board decides which members serve on those committees.
Any follow-up? Okay, thank you. So we're going to go to Mr. Rockwell, Mayor Hovland, and Representative Weens, and then we'll move on to the next presentation. Mr. Rockwell.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering if you could provide a little more context on the relationship between the RTD governance and DRCOG. It looks like RTD has its own board, kind of where, and that DRCOG sets kind of high-level plans, but then kind of at what point is RTD kind of operating as a solo agency? And in what ways is it kind of subsidiary to DRCOG? How does that relationship work, given that they're separate agencies, and we have here Metro Transit is kind of couched within our Metropolitan Council? And then just an additional kind of structural side question is there, I noticed that water and sewer management is not part of DRCOG's list of responsibilities. What is the management of that? Is there a regional management of that? Is that a separate board, et cetera, et cetera?
Thanks. You read my mind, Mr. Rockwell, with your first question. So thank you for asking my question, but we've got a couple of good ones here. Mr. Rex.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, and thank you for the question. I'll take the second one first. Yeah, we are not. We have no association with water. We used to do, back in the day, water quality analysis, but we don't do that anymore. That was, it was a requirement through state statute that was created, an opportunity for us to do that, but we don't do that anymore. Yes, as you can imagine, especially in this part of the country, water is a very hot item, and there are many umbrella boards associated with water quality and water consumption. So, but it's outside of our realm. Related to the relationship with RTD, yeah, I mean, they're obviously an independent agency from us, but I do believe that, the relationship that we have with RTD is relatively seamless, and then there's reasons for that, right? It's the counterplay that we have, or the interplay that we have between them with our various committees and work groups. So I think the establishment of a regional transportation committee, for example, I think provides a great opportunity for our board members, which are elected officials, and RTD board members, which are also elected officials, to establish relationships. And the RTD meets, or sorry, the RTC, the Regional Transportation Committee, meets monthly. So I think those routes are established between the two agencies. From a staff perspective, I have a wonderful working relationship with Deborah, who's on the call here today. She's nodding, so I'm glad she's in agreement. And I think our staffs, we work so close together on so many things. We house the MPO, so, obviously, RTD projects are required to be in our transportation improvement program. So again, we work really closely with them on a number of aspects, and the relationship couldn't be any better from my perspective. I hope that answered.
Mr. Rockwell? Any follow-up?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we're going to have Mayor Hovland, Representative Wiens, and then I'm going to give the last word to Ms. Paddock, and then we'll move on.
Thank you,
Mayor
Mr. Chair.
Hovland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Mr. Rex. Nice to have you here. So my question is a segue off of Mr. Rockwell's question, and that was, how do the responsibilities of the RTD, the RTC differ from that of the DRCOG from a statutory standpoint, or can you give us any Colorado statutory references that we can look at ourselves to determine those distinctions? Because I thought your answer was understandable, but still a little bit vague on where all these responsibilities lie between RTD, RTC, and DRCOG.
Thank you. And Mr. X, I appreciate the question for Mayor Hovland. It is sort of something we've been looking at. So, I'm glad we have a series of questions about this relationship between the transit agency and the regional planning agency. Mr. X.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, thank you for the question. I do not have those legislative references as it relates to, RTD but there are certainly within statute, which we can provide, statute related to the formation of RTD, their role and responsibilities, as well as the formation of councils of governments or regional planning commissions and all that kind of good stuff within statute that we can provide. The federal role of our Metropolitan Planning Organization, the creation of the Regional Transportation Committee, that's done in compliance with federal law. As I noted, it's kind of unique for us to have an RTC. It's not required by federal law, but we are required to have a planning and approval process. And we, as a region, decided many years ago that this is the avenue that we wanted to take. So, but again, we're welcome to provide any of those references in statute.
Follow-up, Mayor Hovland.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of other structural questions, Mr. Rex. Are the DRCOG and the RTD boundaries the same?
They are not. No.
How do they differ?
They differ in that Deborah, I'm looking at you. I don't know if our boundary it's broader in a lot of cases, but I think they might cover. I don't know. I'm not sure if they cover. I don't know if you have any boundary outside of our region, Deborah, but our boundary is significantly bigger than the RTD district.
All right, so we've got your DRCOG boundary on slide 2, I think it was. And
Yes.
then the RTD is a little bit more compressed than that. It's a smaller boundary, or?
It is.
Within
It's
the
closer.
boundary.
It's closer to I don't have it in front of me. It's closer to is it green boundary? the smaller boundary, the MPO boundary?
Okay. Yeah, you've got them shaded, so all right.
Yes.
Okay, that's helpful. And then you've got those 58 representatives. How does that break down between cities and counties?
It's primarily made up of local of cities and towns. There are
10 counties?
Yes, we're wholly or partially within 10 counties. So we're in 9 counties fully, and then we have a little piece of Southwest Weld in the northeast corner.
Okay. And then does the DRCOG have any taxing authority?
We do. Well, statute, we do have the ability to form a regional transportation authority. And that was something that was given to us fairly recently, over the last few years. It is not something that we've implemented as a board, or
Okay.
even talked about, quite frankly.
So this would maybe just be a point of information as my final question, but I remember years ago when your region first embarked on expanding its light rail system, and there was tension between the legislature and local governments. I think mayors in the Denver region led the way on trying to get a local option sales tax put into place through the voting public. And we're finally able to get authority from the legislature, I think overriding a governor's veto, to be able to do that. Did the COG, DRCOG, have any role in that, or is that all local government based? Do you remember,
Yeah, well,
or maybe I'm still off on that. Do you have a recollection of that?
Mr. Chairman, well, that predates me for sure, but I will say yes. I mean, you are correct in that they did seek and pass a sales and use tax for initiative, which we at the time called Fast Tracks, which was at the time the largest transit investment in the country, creating fixed rail throughout our region. As far as DRCOG's role, I know there were conversations, of course, around the DRCOG board table. There's an association of mayors here in our region. It's called Metro Mayors Caucus, and from my understanding on history is that they took a very active role in marketing and advocating for this regional system. So it was more a role of Metro Mayors Caucus than it was at DRCOG at the time. I will tell you, the one last thing I might share with you with regards to our relationship with RTD is that, because it's related to this Fast Tracks initiative, is that the legislature passed in the mid-90s, I believe, associated with Fast Tracks, that if there was a change in technology that from what was on the ballot initiative, a change in technology or change in finances or stuff like that, that the RTD would have to come to the DRCOG board, and that would have to be certified by the DRCOG board in order to move forward. And to this day, RTD still does an annual report to the DRCOG board on the status of the Fast Tracks initiative. So there is at least that's grounded in statute that kind of formalizes that relationship.
So as you've gone through the years expanding your light rail system, your transit system, what's been the role of DRCOG relative to the RTC in that expansion?
Well, I would say this. I think it's primarily it's an opportunity to collaborate and discuss, right, about where funding's coming from, what corridors are a priority, which corridors should be next in line to advance. We also do have funding available that's suballocated to us through the federal government that we have provided at times to RTD in their service development. So I think that's primarily what our role is.
Okay, good. Thanks for that.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mayor
Mr.
Howell.
Chair.
Great series of questions. We're going to go to Representative Weens, and then the last question for Ms. Paddock.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Rex. I appreciate very interesting presentation. Mine goes to your Metro Vision 2040, slide 9, where I thought I heard you say there is community autonomy on which of the 5 or all of the 5 or maybe none of the 5 themes, from development to transportation to economy. Is it the community's choice then maybe not to develop at all if they're in a prescribed growth corridor for transportation or development? And then if you could tell us if there's any forcing mechanisms, negotiation, cajoling, whatever action that DRCOG would take.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Representative, thank you for the question. Yes, so just to make sure we're clear on this, so the actual outcomes of MetroVision, those were unanimously adopted by our board. So what I was referring to is like, underneath the outcomes, I mean, this gets real nerdy real quick, but under the outcomes, we have strategies, and then we have what we call strategic initiatives or methods in which if implemented, will meet the strategies and ultimately the outcomes. What we have in those strategies, and it's literally, it's a menu of things that local governments can do in order to help us reach our ultimate goals. They are not required to implement any of those in the menu, although it is expected and assumed that they will implement some. And I think the simple fact that the board unanimously approved MetroVision, which included those initiatives, is kind of speaking to their acceptance that they do need to do something. Now, related to your second question with regards to corridors or and the like, they are not required to do anything, right? I mean, what we provide is, kind of best practices, we certainly have conversations if they want to have conversations to best implement strategies within corridors, but we do have no mechanism to make them do so, nor do we want it.
Representative Weems?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Rex. That was very enlightening. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Ms. Paddock?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions, but before that, I have just an observation. Looking at the statement of the vision statement, the region's plan is to ensure a high quality of life for all ages, incomes, and abilities. I believe that our Minnesota statute has nothing about quality of life, and it says that the goal is economic prosperity. And as I have brought up before in this task force, it's quality of life issues that repeatedly come up when people have problems with what our Met Council is doing. But I have two questions. First of all, Mr. Rex, is this a correct impression that I have? And I don't know how much you know about our Met Council, but it seems as if our Met Council operates from a dynamic of power, and yours operates from a dynamic of relationships and collaboration. As far as you know, would that be a correct impression that I have?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. I'm sorry, I can't speak to Met Council because I really don't know enough about it to be able to even suggest an opinion. But what I can offer is what, we at DRCOG have prided ourselves on, and that is regional collaboration. I think, we haven't existed since 1955 for no reason, right? And I think, the relationship and attitude that we have with our local governments is such that I think they feel that they have a legitimate voice at the table. Listen, I'm not going to suggest that, some of the larger players within our region, there's not a perception that they get more than their fair share. But I don't think in reality that's true. And I think members would tell you that they feel very comfortable and having those conversations at the table, and our larger communities are more than accepting of those opinions.
Ms. Paddock, I think you had a second question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What is how would you characterize the general public satisfaction with the way you folks are set up? What are the chronic complaints, if there are any, about how DRCOG operates?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, sorry, thank you. That's a wonderful question. It's interesting because we are a regional planning agency. I play a lot of golf, too much golf, my wife says, but I hate when I play with someone new, right? Because I know the ultimate question is coming. What do you do for a living? And to try to explain what DRCOG is between the eighth tee box and the eighth green ain't easy, right? Because we're not like anything else. We're not local government. We're not state government. We're this regional planning agency, and they look at me like I'm insane, right? So I think what we've tried to do through the years is try to educate the importance of what regional collaboration is, the importance of local governments getting together and discussing stuff. So I would suggest, and listen, we've done some just surveys through the years about if the public even recognizes what we are, right? And I think overall, there's those that are familiar with us. They have a positive reaction when they hear the name. But I'll be honest, I don't, we don't have that level of, we don't have that level of public knowledge like RTD does. Because, it's kind of wonkish planning stuff, right? If that makes any sense.
Mr. Chair, do you feel you need that kind of visibility and recognition, or are you able to operate satisfactorily without it?
Well, we certainly operate satisfactorily without it. I think it would be nice if we had more input from the public on our various plans and policies and programs, right? I mean, we do, I don't want to downplay what our role is in this and the recognition of the public with what we are and who we are. There are plenty that know who we are and what we do. And again, I think, they have a positive reaction when they hear our names. But again, I think we'd always like to have more input from the public in our process.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Paddock. And Mr. X, I just really wanted to thank you for your insights, your time. I know you're very busy, and we're navigating through a complex process here. But I think you really did a fantastic job of answering some good questions that our people were asking, and I know you'll be available potentially, if folks have other questions, you can direct them to me and we can, and Ms. Kohler, and we can direct them to Mr. X. But really appreciate your time, and this was really a great session. So thank you very much. And now, members, we're going to shift over to our other guests joining us from Denver. And this we'll have an opportunity to really dig in a little deeper into some of the questions around transit. We had a couple of questions already from Mr. Rockwell and Mayor Hovland about the relationship between DRCOG and RTD. And this is really the purpose of this next section. And so we have two folks. Deborah Johnson is RTD's general manager, who's joining us. Very, very excited to have Deborah Johnson with us. And then we also have Kate Williams, who will be following Deborah Johnson. And Kate Williams is a board member of the RTD and is elected. And so some of the questions around the election process and how that works, would be good questions for Kate Williams. So with that, welcome Deborah Johnson to our committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. I think you'll have some comments, and then we'll have Q&A with you, and then we'll move on to Kate Williams. Welcome.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Chair, and greetings to all those who are assembled with the Legislative Task Force, both in the chambers and virtually. As introduced, I am Deborah Johnson. I serve as the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer of the Regional Transportation District. What I would like to do is just to provide some quick comments to orient you to the Regional Transportation District as it relates to our auspices. So as you heard from Mr. Rex, RTD was created in 1969 by the Colorado General Assembly, and the sole purpose was to provide mass transit services to the burgeoning Denver metropolitan region. As you stated, Mr. Chair, we do have a publicly elected board of directors. They are comprised of 15 members representing our 2,342 square mile service area, and each member represents more than 200,000 constituents, and Director Williams surely can speak to that. As relates to RTD, we provide mass transit services, and our primary modes consists of fixed route bus service, in which we have 126 bus routes. We have 8 light rail lines. We have 4 commuter rail lines, 3 of which are operated through a concessionaire agreement, and we operate 1 directly. More specifically, with RTD's fixed route service and paratransit service, we do contract out 50% of that, and we do offer microtransit services as well. As it relates to our service area, we do have a comprehensive regional transportation network relative to the modalities I just qualified. We have an 8-county service area that is comprised of 40 jurisdictions. And that area has more than 3 million in population within our service area. And our area, our metropolitan region, is vastly growing. One thing that is very important to note is the relationship with DRCOG, recognizing that the RTD has auspices over service delivery to the region. They have planning responsibilities, but most importantly, when we look at the board of directors for DRCOG, I would like to state that we have a planning professional that sits as the ex officio member, as opposed to myself, where I pride myself of being more of a public administrator with emphasis on government relations and legislative affairs as my background. And I think that's quite important because that lends itself to the collaborative partnership that we have holistically with DRCOG. More specifically, as it relates to the Regional Transportation Committee, I do serve on that as a voting member, as indicated in the slides that Mr. Rex showcased to all of you, and Director Williams serves as one of the other 3 board members that are there. At this juncture, I will yield the floor to Director Williams. She can offer great perspective. She has been on our board now, 7 years, going into her 8th year, and I have been at the agency for 3 years. So with that, if it's permissible, Mr. Chair, I will yield the floor to Director Williams. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you for your comments. So yeah, let's do that. Let's have Director Williams, and then we'll ask if the committee has questions, we can ask both, we can direct them to one or both of you at that point. So welcome, Director Williams. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, sir. My name is Kate Williams, and as Deborah and you all mentioned, I am an elected public official. It's essentially, just for the record, an unpaid position. There's a small stipend, but most of my peers who serve on the RTD Board of Directors do work regular jobs on top of their RTD position. I have approximately, last I heard, 202,000 constituents. My district is one of 15 districts in the RTD floor plan, as it were. I have the majority of downtown Denver, so I have a lot of fun with stuff going on in the city itself. The position is good for 2 terms only, so I am not reelectable, as I am in my 7th year, my 2nd term. And I think that rather than pontificate, which Deborah Johnson can tell you I'm quite capable of doing at length, I'll let you all ask what it is that you want to know.
Well, excellent. Thank you. I think I have a few questions, but let's start with members. Ms. Beckman.
I don't know who to direct the question to, but I'm curious about your elections. Do you have candidates for all of your 15 districts? And like, it is a really robust election cycle, and how much money is spent in the campaigns? Like, if you could just tell us a little bit about what it takes to be a council member, that'd be really helpful.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. We are actually known as board members, and we are, interestingly enough, state officials. We are under the Secretary of State's listing for state officials. The elections are staggered. We are a board of 15. 8 of us are elected every 7 or 8, depending on which cycle it is, are elected every 2 years. So we have a turnover in our board every 2 years, which leads to some interesting changes in education. Most of the board of directors do hold their position for both terms that they are able to, although there's no mandate for that. I personally did not raise any money in either of my campaigns. I am a longtime advocate for older adults and people with disabilities, and I'm fairly well known in the community for that. And as I'm sure you all know, transportation is absolutely a social determinant of health. And so those communities are very supportive of any support that they can get in-house. Outside of that and my RTD work, I've been involved with DRCOG on a variety of projects, and in my day job have been a recipient of DRCOG's Area Agency on Aging funding to help transportation programs for older adults. What was the rest of that long question?
Ms. Beckman, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, sorry, I mushed a bunch of questions together. I think I'm curious about how many candidates run. Are these competitive seats? Kind of what
Very
Mary
much
was
so.
asking. Like, do people know the RTD and they want to be a part of it, and so it's hard fought, and there are lots of people running for these?
So as I think Mr. Rex pointed out, it's a very, very big geographic area and a very diverse area. So for example, each time that I ran for my seat, there was myself and 3 other candidates just for my seat. However, we have had some seats where there were next to no candidates. I'm not sure recently, we have Michael Davies as our government guy on the call, if he remembers, if anybody recently has had to have been appointed. So it varies. That's a very insightful question. And I think that if you all were to have this model, you would find that how the election runs varies widely based on the area.
Any follow-up? Okay. Other questions, Mr. Rockwell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another question for Ms. Williams. Could you talk a little bit about what the time commitment is? You say you have a full-time job. Most of the other folks on the board have full-time jobs. What is the time commitment of serving on the board of doing the job? And do you feel like the time you're able to give is adequate?
I think so. We get super support from Deborah and her staff, which has always been helpful. We have a staff of 4. The board has a staff of 4. Granted, those 4 people serve 15 elected officials, so they work very hard also. I'd say the time commitment is probably a minimum of 10 hours a week. And based on what's going on in the region, politically or in the world of transportation, it can be more than that. I personally, as I said, have been in transportation, working with older adults for a number of years. So my day job and my RTD service go hand in hand very much. We have a number of, let's see, Deborah, our board is made up of lawyers, elected officials on their way up, elected officials on their way out, and transit advocates. I'd say that's the bulk of who makes up our board. There you go.
Did you have a follow-up, Mr. Rockwell?
No, thank you.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 questions along different lines, but one kind of just a grounding question. So in our area, when it comes to transit, we have Metro Transit, which is operated by the Metropolitan Council, and then we have what we call Suburban Transit Authorities, or STAs, which are public-private partnerships that serve various communities. So just a simple question, are you the sole provider of transit within the entire region, or do you have these other public-private partnerships that are operating?
I'm going to start that, and I'm going to give it to Deborah. From the board viewpoint, we partner with a number of providers that we subcontract, especially in our paratransit work, and some of those are regional. Deborah, you want to expound on that?
Yes, thank you so much, Director Williams. Mr. Chairman, if I may, RTD serves as the sole regional transportation provider in the metropolitan region. To the point Director Williams raised, there are partnerships in which we have, where we have contracted services. Those contracts are through the Regional Transportation District, and we leverage those for paratransit. And as I stated in my opening comments, for our fixed route bus service, there are some portions of contracts that we leverage for portions of our service area. Most recently, through a collaborative effort, the board created sub-regional service councils, and those are primarily to support localized services, recognizing we are the RNRTD being regional. We do not provide services within neighborhoods per se in some of the outlying areas. And in doing so, we have provided monetary support. We are in our inaugural year. Those partnerships have not yet taken off, but historically there have been some, hence that led to the creation of the partnership program, because there wasn't a level playing field in which we had with multiple jurisdictions for them to engage with us. It was more or less the squeaky wheel got the grease. And so we put out a call for projects with eligibility criteria, recognizing that they had to be equitable in reference to service. They had to fill a need. They had to align with RTD strategic priorities of community value, customer excellence, and financial success. And we actually modeled the call for projects after DRCOG's call for projects, in which they do with the TIP process.
Senator Pratt, and we'll then go to
Thank
several
you.
other members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to kind of wrap a couple of questions up into one. We've seen local elections become more and more partisan over time. Are you starting to see elections on the RTD board becoming partisan? And then as elected officials, do you have taxing authority for your transit district? And how do you manage your capital investments?
Great question.
Okay, I'll start, and then I'll roll over to my staff, who is an expert in her field, and I am not an expert in my field. I'm just the elected person in my field. Do we see them being more partisan? I don't think so. Denver is an anomaly in that we are the state capital, and 3/5 of the people in the state live in Denver and within our region. So we are pretty purple. So no, I do not believe that I have noticed that in transportation that there is partisanship. That was the first part of the question. Try me again with the next part of it.
Then it was, do you have taxing authority, and how do you accommodate your capital needs?
That's part one and part two. Yes, we do, and I will give the rest of it to Deborah, even though I just sat through a budget meeting last night. She's the pro.
Thank you very much, Director Williams. Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yep, proceed.
Yes, so as we talk about our capital investments, specifically, we do have a transit asset management plan, as most transit agencies do, as it is a statutory requirement at the federal level. And so basically, we look at our assets from the vantage point of their useful life and what we need from an infrastructure vantage point to deliver our transit services. In doing so, basically, we have an obligation to ensure that they are in a state of good repair. And as we look at our capital program, we align that as relates to our budgetary needs and what our needs are for the region as a whole in reference to delivering transit services. So as we talk about our capital investments, we ensure that we are being good fiduciaries of taxpayer dollars. Through the report or the testimony that Mr. Rex gave when he mentioned fast tracks, which was a major capital investment program that RTD undertook about 20 years ago, and it's still ongoing in that vein, that we report out through DRCOG as well, and that was the fast tracks reports that he mentioned. And more specifically, recognizing that we do have an elected board that serves as our policy body, we report to them relative to capital investments. And more specifically, in my role as the general manager and CEO, I have a delegation of authority, which is only up to $2 million, recognizing that holistically we have a budget operating and capital in excess of like $1.2 billion. I am keeping the board apprised on those investments as we go forward from a fiduciary standpoint.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick follow-up. I'm a former banker, so I get a little nerdy on this. I'm kind of curious, are you paying for those capital investments out of the transit tax? Do you have borrowing authority, or do you have to rely on the legislature for some of the capital investments?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Ms. Johnson.
Thank you very kindly for the question. So interestingly enough, RTD does not receive a substantial amount of investment or monies, I should say, from the state of Colorado. We have had partnerships with the state most recently as it relates to providing zero fares for transit customers throughout the state, which RTD benefited from. So aside from that, we do not get designated money from the state of Colorado. More specifically to your point, yes, we do leverage other means in which to finance projects. We use certificates of participation, bonds, and things of the like. And most recently, I'm proud to tout that we have a AAA rating as related to our recent, God, I can't speak right now, our bonds. And so that was something we were touting last evening before the board and the public as a whole.
Senator Pratt? Okay. So here's the list. It's expansive, so I want to make sure that people maybe just ask one, at most two questions, and keep it brief. Commissioner Green, Senator Port, Mayor Hovland, Representative Cleavorn, Ms. Paddock, and I have a few too if they're not asked by everyone else. But so this is great. I think for our friends in Denver, you can see this is a very, particularly this piece with the transit is especially important to us. So Commissioner Green.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for meeting with us today. It's so interesting. I have two questions. The first is for Ms. Johnson. I wanted to ask a follow-up to something that Senator Pratt asked about the vision that you described for local projects and the vision that they emerge to provide transit on a very localized level. Will they become a part of RTD? I know you described that they need to meet hurdles that match RTD's goals, but will they become a part of your network?
And I'm not sure who wants to take that. Maybe
Mr.
Ms.
Chair,
Johnson.
if I may.
Yeah.
Yes. So some qualifying, I'd like to have some qualifying statements before I address the question. First and foremost, within the city and county of Denver, which is the largest city within our region and also the state, the city and county of Denver does have a Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. They do provide what I would qualify as some on-demand service to certain neighborhoods that they have conferred with us on prior to our call for projects partnership. Most recently, we did provide financial support to one of their existing programs because it really feeds into our greater transit network. As it relates to the question about whether or not these entities would become part of the Regional Transportation District, we already, the projects in and of themselves, I would state most likely not, because we are leveraging partnerships going forward, but there could be a potential if in fact we saw a need through looking at various data sets relative to boarding. So it could be more fruitful and beneficial to leverage a 40-foot or 60-foot articulated bus if that service grew and there was greater need. And that was the intent behind the program. With the adverse effects of COVID and I would say commuting patterns being shifted, we had to make some difficult decisions as it related to finances and things of the like. And so some of our bus routes and rail lines weren't carrying the same number of customers as was done previously, and did yield a good return on investment from the cost per revenue hour. So with that being said, the notion behind having this partnership program whereby we could put some means of mobility in play through a collaborative effort and partnership with jurisdictions, that's how this program came to fruition. So there is the potential that it could, but I can't say that with any certainty, recognizing that we are in our infancy with this program. And then lastly, just recognizing that if in fact there were other areas that had development or things of the like, there's an annexing process for an entity, a geographic entity to join the Regional Transportation District, and that's written in statute as well.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Just a super quick follow-up on that one, and this could be a yes or a no, but do you envision that some of those entities might be private companies who see an opportunity to provide an unmet need and could, it would be self-sustaining?
I would say no, because they need to work through the jurisdiction, so that would be a partnership with the jurisdiction, and that's what's happening right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And then, I'm sorry, my quick question for Ms. Williams. I wondered, do you feel that first of all, do you have the legal authority to make change? But then also, do you think that the structure that you're a part of enables you to make change?
Okay, that's a tough one. Yes, I think that the structure allows the RTD Board of Directors to make change. We have we are a big agency. We have almost 3,000 people. And so we have some really qualified staff that run the agency. The board is more on the, you guys have heard this before, in the 30,000 foot level. We're the policy makers. The difference being that because we are elected, we are in touch. Every day I get a phone call or an email from a constituent. Last night at the board meeting, we had a number of people. Ms. Johnson is nodding her head. We had a number of constituents live giving us feedback because it is an elected body. I think that people tend to feel more involved. We do some really good outreach meetings, so we listen. It was a discussion we had last night until almost 10 o'clock at night about what people wanted from the agency in particular areas, be it routing, be it finance, be it reporting. So I think that, yes, we do have the authority to make change. Legally, I don't know how much legal authority we have to make change. That would depend on what kind of change you're referring to.
Thank you. That was enough for me.
Okay. Thank you. And what's good is you asked one of my three questions. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Director Williams. This is sort of a follow-up to that question from Commissioner Green. We've had some concern around our Met Council that it sometimes feels like decisions are actually made by staff who are not appointed and who don't have deep connections to community. What are the ways that you think that your organization sort of helps to combat that? Are there transparency pieces? Are there community engagement? I know you said you are only part-time, and so like thinking through what that looks like, you making decisions versus staff making decisions when you are accountable to the public. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Great question.
Oh, yeah. Not only can I talk about it, but have talked about it. I'm hoping that Ms. Johnson will be nodding her head in the background there. Actually, the board of directors, because they are elected officials and need to have a lot of information, works heavily with the board, with Ms. Johnson and with all of the senior managers, all the way down to people who wouldn't qualify as being in senior management. I'll give you a fun example. The other night, I stood at 5 o'clock on a Friday night and pulled the switch on the Christmas tree in front of Union Station. That is the kind of thing that the board does all the time. We have coffee shops, we have public meetings, we speak, we are involved. Our board chair was reading a list last night of the things that our board members do, including sitting on the Colorado Electric Vehicles Coalition, being on the C470 Highway Commission. So we are not only involved with the agency and the policy decisions there, but we in many cases are the face of the agency. If you go on Google right now, you can look up my name and you'll get my phone number, which will ring right here on my phone. Because I am an elected public is the keyword official. And the 14 other people who serve with me are all really great in that aspect. Deborah, do you want to add anything to that?
I would say that's spot on. I would say additionally, in reference to doing presentations and things of the like, Director Williams talked about staff support. What we do after each board meeting, we provide them with a template presentation. So they have the most up-to-date information. Perhaps they will get questions that are geared towards staff, but they are well-versed in that arena as well and can speak to that. More specifically, I would say as well that members of the board host their own town hall meetings within their specific district as well, and staff may support that. When I say may, in the sense that they're the spokesperson, it's within their district, but staff will be there to support their efforts if there's more questions that are geared toward like service planning. Where's my bus? Why don't we have 15-minute frequencies and things of the like? But I would say that the board is well engaged and they understand quite naturally the impact with service delivery to their constituents. And oftentimes, Director Williams may send an email just to keep us aware that she got some inquiry from a council member or somebody within staff of city and county of Denver, and she's handling it. So there's no duplicative efforts there. And we sort of shore that up a little bit, because to the average bear, there could be some blurring of the lines, and that's why it's important that we stay in communication and have an understanding of who's on first. So that's all I have to add to that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Port, did you have any follow-up? Or?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your question. Mayor Hovland, and then Chair Cleaborn is on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. One question for Deborah Johnson as Executive Director, one question for Kate Williams. For Director Johnson, as we look at these different potential models of governance, including assessing our own, it would be helpful if we could have a copy of your budget for the RTD. Would you be, that's a public document, could you provide that to our chair?
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes.
Most definitely, the board just approved our budget last night because we are on a calendar year, not a traditional fiscal year. So we will ensure that we get that.
Hot off the press, Mayor.
Okay.
Hot off the press. Yeah, very good. Thank you. And then Director Williams, you mentioned right at the beginning of your comments that you were modestly compensated. So we're not interested in delving into your private life, but your public compensation, what is it, please?
It's $1,000 a month.
All right.
Before taxes.
Thank you.
$744 after taxes.
Sounds like a mayor's salary to me.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mayor Hovland. Chair Cleaborn.
Thank you, Chair Hornstein. And these questions, I think, mostly will go to the Executive Director. I just want to make sure that I have a clear understanding of the RTD based on all of the things I've heard today. So I'll go through it really quickly, and then you can say, yes, you have it, or you're way off base. So you do have, so as the RTD, you are both the planner and the operator of your transit, and you do the planning in conjunction with DRCOG. But as I understand it, you have taxing authority, borrowing authority, bonding authority. And then the RTD relies heavily on paid staff for their knowledge base. And then I want to make sure that I'm also understanding that with the elected directors, elected directors, you are very clear about the lanes that you have, and that the board members are very good about going out and collecting the information from the public and being maybe, I would call them the innovation directors, and then bringing that back to the competent professional staff and saying, how do we meet the needs of our citizens? Do I kind of have that right in my head? Is that what I'm hearing?
If I
Ms.
may,
Johnson.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Yes,
Proceed.
thank you so much. So I would say for the most part, yes, I want to qualify when we talk about planning. So service planning and aspects of planning as it relates to future projects, yes, we do. And we do collaborate with RTD. We collaborate with DRCOG.
Yes.
As it relates to bonding, taxing authority, yes, you have that correct. As it relates to the board, I would say that's mainly right sometimes, and I'll stand in my truth here, there'll be some blurring of lines as I've worked at different transit agencies, and Director Williams can appreciate this because she constantly says to me, she's the elected official, and I recognize that. I come from a different vantage point, having worked with different models, so I recognize Director Williams in particular, what she brings to the table. And so as we look at some of the inquiries that we get, we have to confer oftentimes on who's on first. Director Williams, would you say that's a fair statement? Okay. And so I just wanted to qualify that because I don't want to make it seem like everything is chocolate sprinkles and rainbows, because oftentimes we do have to confer about what it is. And as staff, we do provide support to the board as well. If there is a question they get from a constituent that may be more operational in nature, we will help prepare that response to give to the director. And in certain instances, the director could say, oh, I'm going to a constituent, if it's an email transmittal, there could be instances where I'm copied and it says I am copying the general manager and chief executive officer as she and her staff can respond to this. So just wanted to give those qualifiers, but I believe you did sum it up in a nutshell.
Okay.
And Chair Cleaborn.
Yes, and then I just wanted to ask one thing, because we didn't really discuss this in your funding stream, and maybe with the reading of your budget, that'll help us understand. But do you also do funding through Farebox?
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes, proceed.
Yes, so RTD's primary revenue source is sales and use tax. As it relates to Farebox recovery, like most transit agencies nowadays, there's not a lot of recouping as it relates to our operational costs. We're probably about 7% of our fare box, but even prior to the pandemic, we weren't relying on the fare box to cover operations. As I said, that probably is 7% of our budget, whereas sales and use tax is the vast majority.
Okay,
and we're currently looking at diversifying our revenue. We are going through I'm not going to use the term exercise, it's more than that. We're going through an assessment whereby the board is involved, and we're leveraging our Citizens Advisory Committee to be thought leaders on this and do some research. And we will be heavily involved with that in the upcoming months and bring that forward to the board for consideration as we discern what our path forward is, recognizing the fertility as it relates to the economy, and just relying on sales and use tax could put us in a very precarious position.
Okay.
Did you have one quick follow-up?
One last follow-up, and this is for for the director, Ms. Williams, I think.
Yes,
yes,
correct.
Thank you. With your work on the adult aging, I'm also on a task force on aging in Minnesota. I'm just wondering if you ever feel that your professional work as a state employee is in conflict with your director position. I realize that they are complementary in many ways, but do you ever have a conflict of interest in the work that you do?
On the contrary,
Awesome.
I think that public transportation is so vital. older adults, as you know, from your work probably, are very dependent on a variety of sources of transportation. Giving up the car keys is one of the hardest things that we do as we age. And so, no, I think that my work in the field of transportation as a whole has continued to bring the outlook, as I said earlier, of social determinant of health and aging and disability to the field of transportation, which traditionally has not been considered part of. You know, a food bank is no good if you can't get there. And a clinic is no good if you can't get there. And our work with DRCOG, for example, when we go to the Regional Transportation Council, Deborah's there, I'm there, our planner is there, DRCOG's planners are there, the regional air quality people are there, the county mayors are there. And we talk about how transportation as a whole affects the quality of life in Denver, which is pretty darn good, by the way.
I would just like to say thank you, and I may be reaching out to you at a later date for a more fuller conversation on that topic. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
I appreciate your questions, Chair Cleburne. So we're going to have Ms. Paddock and me. Hopefully we can wrap this up by, at the very latest, 11:40. Then we're going to have a approximately 15-minute presentation from the Scott County, Leslie Vermillion from the Scott County Administration, or she's the administrator, and then we'll conclude with public testimony if there is any today. So that's the rest of our agenda till noon, and I'd like to call on Ms. Paddock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question that I'd like to ask of all three of you, if Mr. Rex is still plugged into this conversation.
Okay.
What do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of being independent, an independent agency, as opposed to a part or a subdivision of DRCOG?
Okay, who wants to take that
Oh,
first?
I would suggest that Doug go first, but I'm not sure if he's here. Ron, are you here, Papsdorf? And,
Yes,
there's Doug.
Mr. Rex is still with us.
Mr.
He's been
Rex.
monitoring the conversation.
I am. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Proceed.
Great, thank you very much. I can only speak to the relationship that we have with RTD. It's the one I only feel comfortable commenting on. And I will tell you that, listen, and it's not always the case, and this is the fourth Council of Governments that I've been part of through my professional career. And the relationship with the Regional Transit Agency is not always, right, a positive and good working relationship. But I will tell you, the relationship that we have with RTD is wonderful. And we have a tremendous working relationship with, amongst and between our elected officials and amongst staff. It's a model that, for whatever reason, works well here at DRCOG. It's not necessarily one that, that has worked well in other places, but in other places it has worked. So I'll just leave it there. I don't know if CEO Johnston would like to provide additional comments.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, proceed, and then, we'll hear from all three of you, because I think Ms. Paddock wanted to hear from all three of you. So, correct. Proceed.
Thank you so much. I would echo the comments of Mr. Rex, recognizing this is a seventh transit agency for which I work, and I've worked across the country. There's different models. I actually worked at an agency that served as the Regional Transit Planning Authority as well, and it was in an area that had multiple service providers, and there was this perception that we would plan for the betterment of the agency for which I work. And so recognizing that there are a myriad of different models, I think it's important to assess what might be beneficial for your region and the communities in which you serve. With that as the backdrop, I do think the way we are structured here makes a lot of sense relative to RTD being the only intermodal transit agency in the state in the most populous region, which is the Denver Metropolitan region. So that makes a lot of sense in that vein. And then recognizing the responsibilities of RTD for delivering transit services and the responsibility when you deliver transit services, you have to plan for that service. And so having a clear-cut relationship with our planning staff, with DRCOG, I think is quite advantageous. And even my interaction with individuals on DRCOG's board, I also engage with them as relates to other jurisdictional matters. And so it is a benefit in reference to having that rapport with them and having an understanding of what the transportation necessities are, because I'm a firm believer public transportation is interwoven in the fabrics of the communities that we serve. And I often say it's the great societal equalizer. And as Director Williams commented about aging adults, I clearly see the importance of that, because we have to look at public transportation. In my mind, transportation as a whole, it's a three-legged stool. You have to look at land use, transportation, and housing, and all of that goes hand in hand. And we have had those conversations at RTC, and I think that's critically important. And with that, I'll yield the floor to Director Williams.
Okay, Director Williams.
Okay, I think that you all can see from the way that the three of us have been tossing the ball around that we obviously get along. We're used to working with each other, and I think the degree of respect is probably obvious. It's very nice because the Council of Governments is made up predominantly of elected officials, whereas normally the Transportation Agency does not have elected officials. So in our case, I'm able to sit there and talk to my peers on Doug's board, and Doug and Deborah can talk as the chief executive officers, or whatever you guys' beautiful title is at the moment. And then the three of us work well together all the time. So I think it's great how it is structured. That's my take.
Thank you. So I just saw that Representative Koznick has a question, and so then I'm going to call on him first, and then I'll have the last question, and we'll move on quickly from there. Representative Koznick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. This has been fascinating to listen to, and maybe the first presenter, I didn't quite catch his name as I'm traveling, but can you talk about how a Council of Governance of elected, many electeds in the area, are they able to adequately address some of the redevelopment, and with that comes gentrification, and how is the region kind of addressed gentrification and maybe pushing out naturally occurring affordable housing? And are they doing an adequate job? Is it sometimes it's inevitable, but is there any initiatives to kind of address gentrification and having some of the redevelopment and the transit development address some of those issues? Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Representative Koznick. So that looks like Mr. Rex should take that one, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much, and thank you for the question. And listen, gentrification is a big issue here in the Denver region. We had significant and rapid growth over the last 10 years or so, and as really there's some additional background with regards to our housing stock, and as a result, we're in a situation in which housing costs are just rocketing. And we have not seen any slowdown in the cost of housing in this region. So as a result, gentrification is just something that just inevitably was going to happen, unfortunately. Listen, from DRCOG's perspective, it's not a conversation that we specifically have focused on, but of course, all of our local governments are highly aware and sensitive to this topic. We are, as part of the regional housing assessment / regional housing strategy that we've undertaken, we've initiated a couple months ago, that'll take us into the early part of the summer. We'll be talking a lot about gentrification and possible strategies for for alleviating some of the the concerns and what the obligations might be of local governments to try to get a handle on that. But yes, it's a terrible, significant issue in this region, and it's not gone unnoticed. But I'm quite frankly, I'm just probably not the best one to answer that question right now. If we had staff here, most notably from the city county of Denver, I think they could share with you specifically some of the measures that they're taking.
Thank you, Mr. Reks. So maybe Representative Koznick, it's a great question, and maybe we could do a little bit of follow-up with other staffers in the Denver area. It sounds like that's a good way to go here. So I have the last question here, and over Thanksgiving we had I was at a gathering with a family friend from Denver, and he was very excited that we're having this conversation, and so. The question I have sort of derives from that conversation, but then also one I just had with Senator Pratt, and that is kind of the relationship between DRCOG, the RTD, and the Colorado Department of Transportation. And some of this derives from the person from Denver who I spoke with was concerned about, for example, bike and pedestrian safety, and I'm not a Denver expert, but the two streets that he had mentioned were Federal Boulevard and Colfax. So I don't know if there's a lot of issues around safety there, and the inverted L. He said he said you all would know about the inverted L. So this is something we've talked a lot about transit. But bike and pedestrian choices are also, I think, in the transit field. And so who takes care of that? Or is that a Colorado DOT? And again, how does the road and bridge planning fit into your system? And then also, the bike ped stuff. So those are the last two questions, and then we'll move on. So whoever wants to take those.
Me. I have my hand up first.
Okay,
and then
great. Director, thank you. We'll call on Director Williams.
CDOT is, we are all remiss in not mentioning. We work with CDOT, both DRCOG and RTD on a regular basis and have them involved in most of our planning. The bike and ped situation, we have a number of organizations in the greater Denver area that do great work with DRCOG and with RTD. We have bike and ped accommodations at our RTD stations. We have trails that are related to where you can arrive directly at an RTD station. I know that you can go online and find a great picture of Doug Rex and me in our spandex, standing at one of the events there. And we all, if you noticed, all three of us laughed when you said Federal and Colfax, because both of those, one is an active BRT plan ongoing as we speak. And I believe, unless I'm mistaken, Deborah, that Federal is the next BRT planned. And both of those plans make a lot of allocation for bike and ped. And then I'm going to hand it to my partner in crime first, Deborah, and then she'll probably let Doug speak. Deborah?
Yes, thank you so much, Director Williams, and thank you for the question. As it relates to CDOT, the Colorado Department of Transportation, in particular with Colfax and Federal, quite naturally, those are state highways, and there's collaborative effort. And interestingly enough, this afternoon, I'm having a meeting about East Colfax with our partners that involve the city and county of Denver, the Federal Transit Administration, and CDOT. So there is a lot of collaboration, and I would even tout that our relationship with CDOT has improved immensely over the course of the past few years relative to what we are doing collectively. We look at a myriad of things, and safe paths of travel are critically important, whether somebody is using pedal power or rolling or cycling. And that's something that we have to work collaboratively with. And then more specifically, I don't want to steal Doug Rex's fire, or thunder, or whatever I'm trying to say here, but there is an advanced mobility project that we are a part of, the AMP, Advanced Mobility Plan. And there's representation from CDOT, from DRCOG, from RTD as well as the Metro Chamber of Commerce. And we talk about different elements as well that feed into all of this. So with that, I will yield the floor to Mr. Rex.
Thank you, CEO Johnson. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just want to share a couple of additional points related to that with regards from a regional perspective. Listen, we fully understand that we need to continue to diversify our transportation portfolio in this region. You know, we understand with our air quality issues that we have within our region, lowering VMT per capita is paramount. You know, anybody who's driven through Denver lately can certainly appreciate what I'm saying with regards to just, I mean, congestion is something that is just not sustainable in this region. We're looking at, by the year 2040, having the same level of congestion at noon that we currently have during peak period. And that is not good, in case you were wondering. So so we understand the importance, and quite frankly, our success as a region will result in the success of RTD and the success of our ability to diversify our transportation portfolio. So we have concentrated a lot on active transportation. I would encourage members to visit our website. We have several reports up now on our website related to active transportation. We have a Region Vision Zero plan. Also, we're one of the few in the country that are doing this at the regional level. And, you know, we're really taking our marching orders from that. We just published a report about severe injuries and fatalities from our active transportation sources. So walking, biking, scootering, all the above. So we can have, you know, something grounded in data that then now we can start to hit on improving our network. I will say that we are very proud of the bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure that we have within our region. We have included a significant amount of new bikeways within our region over the last 10 years. Our last transportation improvement program, which we just adopted back this summer, over 70% of those projects were bicycle and pedestrian improvements, infrastructure improvements. So that's significant for this region, and I would suggest to you that that's only the beginning.
Thank you so much. That's a good note to end on. I just want to, again, thank all of you, Ms. Rex, Johnson, Director Williams, for just your engaging with us and answering these questions and the thoroughness of your responses, and you've given us a lot to think about. So appreciate you very, very much, and if there's any follow-up, members will direct it to the three of you. So thank you very, very much, and I don't want to short shrift our last presentation here, so members, I'm just going to give a heads up. I think we'll go till about 5 after here. Just before we do this, so is there anyone here from the public that wants to testify? Because I want to plan for that if we need to. I don't see anyone, and I don't think we have anyone online. So our last presentation, we'll set aside 15 minutes or so for it, is from Leslie Vermillion, the Scott County Administrator, who asked to present, and I thought had a great idea here, which is to sort of give a local perspective on the touch points between the Met Council and counties in particular, particularly because we are engaging with that issue today. So we'll, just for planning purposes, Ms. Vermillion, we'll plan to have you for about 10 to 15 minutes. And if we have some very, very brief questions, we can address those. But we want to make sure we got your presentation in today. So please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
So I'm Leslie Vermillion. I am the Scott County Administrator. I'm not sure I asked to present or got voluntold to present, but I am.
Well, we're glad you're here regardless.
But I am here today and happy to be here. You know, Scott County is a member of the AMC. We're a member of MICA. We're a member of SCAL.
Yes, it was AMC that asked. Thank you for that clarification.
Correct. And this is a presentation we actually made at SCAL several years ago. because there seemed to be some confusion about cities were more impacted by Met Council. And so we had our cities and our county, who part of the County Association, actually sat down, took a look at it, and jointly put this PowerPoint together. It was presented at scale jointly. And as we were going over it, I'm not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I was reminded I am the only remaining county member from the 1990 transition from FAS, FAU to ICE-T and a solicitation. So that shows you how long I've been dealing with the Metropolitan Council. So as I mentioned, most folks kind of think about it as the Met Council impacts the cities more than the county. We really wanted to just say that we thought this was a misperception of it. I actually think what you just heard from Denver, where they have 10 counties and 58 cities, is pretty much our message here, is that both of us are impacted through the Metropolitan Council and the policies that they have. No, I'm not moving. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
So this slide probably is the strongest slide in showing you what we're talking about here. The counties have interaction, as we obviously have comprehensive plans similar to the cities that involve transportation, the regional park system primarily, surface water management, GIS is run through the counties and the Met Council, future wastewater treatment planning, housing, shelter, homeless, and I think this is one to be accentuated. The importance of what's going on in housing and homelessness, and that can only be accomplished, right, through services, which are 100% primarily provided by the counties, agricultural, green space, some of the density policies. And the cities also have extremely strong interactions, right? Wastewater treatment, MUSA, WACSAC, drinking water, housing types, where they have allocations they need to meet livable communities and urban density, which also came up in your conversation earlier. So there are the 7 of us, and just so that folks understand, we have a comprehensive plan, and it really does focus on a majority of what the Met Council looks at in their transportation plan. It is the minor arterial and the principal arterial system. It's where your goods and services move, right, in and out of the state. We're in this donut, those of us that sit on the ring between the metro and the outstate, moving in and out. The transit system, right, is primarily operated at a regional or a county level. They don't know boundaries and borders and lines. They want to move between. Scott County at one point, I was asked also to talk about some concerns, had one of the most robust dial-a-ride systems there were. We had over 5 riders per hour, and that was taken apart because it became a funding concern that we didn't want metro mobility rides with dial-a-rides versus contracted rides. And instead of the creativity that we were moving people and that didn't matter, they took the system apart, and now we had buses crossing one another with 1 rider at a time. And so this is one where I think we could, you could talk about. Regional bicycle transportation, it is primarily built and maintained at the county levels. The freight system, we get involved with those discussions. And then the greenhouse gas discussions has become even bigger over the last legislative session and the impact it has, and the counties are involved in those discussions. At the tab, Mayor Hovland is the expert on this one, as he knows, but we have 7 counties that are involved there. They serve on all 3 of those committees at the technical committee level. We have the solicitations, right, the principal and A minors. Almost all of those come from the 7 counties or 2 of the larger cities. The bridges, the traffic modeling is done at the county level, shared with the cities, the bridges. When it looks at the regional park planning, which is part of their big blueprint, this is the framework, right, for our 10 regional parks. 6 of them are operated by the counties, Bloomington, Minneapolis, and St. Paul, and then 3 Rivers, which started as the Hennepin County Suburban Parks. But these master plans and trails, the funding allocation, again, most of that works through a county process, except in the several larger cities. When it comes to water resources, you can see that Carver, Scott, Dakota, Northern Hennepin, all of these primarily run on a county level. And we have quite a bit of a technical work that our staff do in our environmental areas on the studies, the assistance, watershed, working with the Metropolitan Council, answering questions, doing those studies together. Metro GIS, it all comes from the counties. We work with our cities, but it is county-driven, and the original policy board actually was made of county commissioners, plus the 2 metro cities and some regional agency work. But those are maintained, taken care of, used by the dispatch from the metro counties. In land use, it depends which community or county you're in, but we are involved with rural densities and consistent with those designations. The land use maps requires our council review. Regional wastewater planning is typically done at a county level, trying to identify those areas, identifying some of the long-term needs. Those go through the counties. And the last one is on the housing and the homeless, the shelter work. I think when you take a look at this, and we're talking about housing, right now, our Health and Human Services and the coordination that we're having and learning so much that we have to provide those services. We can't just house people and expect it to change, right? We have to set them on and help support them till we can get them back on their feet. And that is a critical part of what the counties are doing. And I think the emphasis in providing those primarily comes from the counties. And this is a growing and evolving area, I think, even as we're talking today. Here is just an example of the housing. So you can see the green there, Washington, Dakota, Scott. We all run our own CDAs. I do believe the Met Council levies, though, the 7 county-wide, and only services the blue areas through their statutory HRA, which is an interesting question I think should be discussed. But that just gives you an example of how the HRAs operate the Section 8 programs within the 7-county area. The other one in housing is the livable communities. When the counties tried, like we had an example with our ARPA funds, just on the edge of a city to provide 90 new units of affordable housing, we were turned down because we were a county and not a city. And so that was kind of a frustration. We couldn't have that dialogue. The city, I'll just go through those because you're probably more familiar with them, but city transportation plans tend to focus, right, on some of their analysis zones, which then feed the growth in the ADTs for the rest of the system. Some of their future collectors, their local bike, they have some relationship with transit investment plans, and then freight system planning, they also get involved with. They have 10 representatives on the technical committee because they should. There's more cities, they are more population-based than the counties were, with each one having a member. They also may solicit on behalf of the county or the state highway system through the TAP process. They are involved with sanitary system planning, and I think this is a positive, right? This is probably a win for our region. I would say every once in a while, a SAC determination becomes frustrating when a school district is trying to provide a daycare for drop-in daycare for GED students and for adult education, and the project is only $170,000, and the SAC charges came back at $200,000. So once you dig into it, it took time. It delayed the project over a year, which then escalated the cost. So again, the relationship and the quality of life, having the trust to go ahead and do the project because it's the right thing to do for the community, and we'll figure out the funding after, that relationship is missing. It's more regulatory than trying to work to do the right thing. Land use, obviously MUSA and growth management in the external counties, some of those urban density targets I think Professor Orfield raised, the transit-oriented development, their comp plan amendments. And then they also have the affordable housing scores and allocations in the cities. They're responsible for the livable community grants. The townships, they're really unique, right? They reside within the metro area, and they do their own planning in some counties, and in some counties, the counties do the planning and zoning, like in Scott, on their behalf. And they do have some of those interactions, and in some places, they do have some developed regional parks. So that's the list. But my message at the time when we were talking about this was that, you know, the thinking is cities are more impacted. Really both are. We both have responsibilities. We both provide important quality of life services to the metropolitan area, and that local elected officials understand these issues. They know how to work through these issues. I think you heard that from the COG there. And at the time, that was the discussion, that local elected officials on a Met Council could work through those, had some understanding, and that both sides play a role in serving our residents.
Well, thank you so much, and I wanted to thank Commissioner Bingham for suggesting this, because it was really timely that we have this presentation today. And so we have a couple people who just wanted to make quick comments. Commissioner Bingham and then Commissioner Green.
Thank you.
And then we'll close with, okay. We have two more, and I promised 5 after 12, so hopefully we can get close to that. Quick comments.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Leslie, for doing this. I can't imagine anyone better to go over these touch points. And I just hope the task force sees this and understands how vitally important the local government officials are in this process. And this is why I think you're going to see a passion, especially from me, as to why the nomination and appointment process really needs to be driven from the local elected officials, and or the governance has to be primarily of local government officials, because exactly of how much responsibility we have to that region, and again, how much of the responsibility comes into providing these services. And we've heard a lot about, the staff and the incredible work that they do from the Met Council, but ultimately that responsibility is on us and how we deliver these services. So I just want to thank Leslie for really doing a great job of pointing out the collaborative relationship that we are going to have with the counties and the cities and the townships, but that counties have such a vital role in a changing role and a growing role as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll have Commissioner Green, Chair Cleavorn, and the last word. Who better than to have the last word than Mayor Jim Hovland, the chair of the TAB himself? So, Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Vermillion. Great to see you, and just thank you for your leadership and the ways that you partner with Hennepin County. We value that relationship, and it's sort of an ethos that I think you bring to the region that is valued by everybody. So big thanks for being here today. I appreciated your overview, and I loved that its roots were in sort of straightening things out and straightening out a perception, and that it was co-written with cities. There are some variations, of course, across counties, and I'd like to emphasize one of them and really give credit to counties in the region for playing a significant role, particularly in transit. When I think of the last 15 years, and I sort of asked our team to do a little bit back of the envelope math, counties across the region have stepped up without any statutory direction to invest significantly in our regional transit system to the tune of $2 billion. That's across the 7 counties. And that's not written in statute anywhere. It's something that we collectively have agreed on and wanted for ourselves and for our region. And it's a huge driver of economic growth, of quality of life, of well-being. I thought the visitor spoke very eloquently about transit and transportation as a determinant of health. And that's something, excuse me, that we've really taken on, not just financially, but we've established the vision for that. And I want to say up front, when at various times when we've talked in this group about frustration with perhaps an undefined vision from the Met Council or lack of accountability, that is in no way a criticism of the staff or the Met Council members. That is a structure, that is a criticism of the structure that has guided good people to make the decisions that they're making. So I don't fault any individual, and I think that we have really great staff at the Met Council and terrific Met Council members, but the structure doesn't allow them or support them to have the vision that our region needs.
Thank you.
And that's something where I think counties have stepped in and funded and led on, and I just want to highlight that. So,
thank you very much for your comments. And we'll have Chair Cleavorn and then Mayor Hovland.
Thank you very much. And my question will be pretty brief. So when we listened to the COG model today from Denver, they talked about the 58 entities. And I sat there and listening, okay, if you only have 10 counties and each one gets a vote, it doesn't seem as though it's weighted properly. So I would ask you, looking at the larger number that we have in our Met Council regional area, what would proportional representation look like in a COG model to you?
Excellent
So
question. Thank you.
I'm going to speak on behalf of what the counties had worked on and proposed, and it was that each county would have a vote, right? There would be 7, but that the other 24, 25 members would be proportional elected officials from the cities move forward. So there would be that proportionality, right? Hennepin County is what, 1.4 million, we're 160,000, but at least our county would have 1 vote. And if you go to all proportionality is today, those are shared. And so we sit with part of Dakota, which doesn't look necessarily like parts of Scott, and we're with parts of Carver. But if you had a 1 county, 1 vote representing those counties and the things that are important, and then had the rest, whatever the right number is, 33, 35, I've heard 27, I've heard it all since 1996, right? I mean, you folks have a chance to do something to end some of this and set us on a trajectory to try something I think that could be remarkable for this region. But whatever that number is, that can be by proportion, which then gives Hennepin County or Ramsey County or Dakota County the right proportion of people for their community.
And just, I understand, I know what you're talking about, and Senator Pratt did advocate, I know, for that, so. Mayor Hovland, you get the last word.
My word is just a compliment to Leslie. She's one of the great public servants in the history of our region and our state, I think. We haven't had much interaction for a couple of years now. It was nice to have her here today, and her views are always important to observe. I don't know who said that cities are more impacted by the Met Council. I don't think anybody here has argued that. I've argued that they're the biggest customers, biggest volume, excuse me, biggest volume of customers, but maybe that was a past position that was taken, so.
Yeah, I think it was a past position that we heard, and so that's why we sat down with, most of you remember Barry Stock, longtime city administrator, community development director, and put this together to say, we're all in this together. We all count, and it should be about the residents, right? And I think it was Ms. Paddock that said quality of life. Every time we think about it, it should be what it has to do with that quality of life as well. I thought that was a great statement that she made earlier on.
So, yeah.
I agree with you.
Want to toss that compliment in her direction?
Yeah, so folks, we'll wrap up soon, but I wanted to give Ms. Paddock an opportunity, and then actually, very appropriate, the last word goes to the author of the 2017 bill. So, Ms. Paddock.
So I have a quick question. When you say proportionality among the cities, would that be proportional by population or by number of cities?
Well, we had always discussed by population.
Thank you.
All right, so Senator Pratt, you have delved into this issue a lot and had a bill in 2017, and so I want to give you the last word on our COG day here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank Leslie for coming today. We're lucky to have her at the county. I know someday she's going to threaten to retire, and we're going to have to figure that out. I think she's threatened it in the past, but as you can see, there's been a lot of thought in the counties, and I just wanted to touch real briefly on a group that she mentioned called SCALE. And it stands for Scott County Area Leaders for Efficiency or Effectiveness. I can't remember which one it is.
Scott County Association for Leadership and Efficiency, yes.
And it's all our member communities coming together and working through building relationships and before there's a crisis, so that when there's a crisis, we know who to call, you know who you're talking to. And Leslie and her staff have just been absolutely phenomenal. A lot of how we grow in Scott County as one of the fastest growing counties in the state, I think is a testament to Leslie's work and the collaboration that she and the county foster across the entire area. So thanks for coming, Leslie. This was a great presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to add my appreciation, and this is an important document, members, so look through it. And I know it took a lot of time to prepare it, and we appreciate that. And to your comments, Senator Pratt, I've gone to a number of SCALE meetings over the years. Then Representative Beard invited me, and it's kind of like a mini COG, and I think there's even some for the county, and there's even nonprofits that attend. So it really is a collaborative body. Ms. Paddock.
This is a kind of off-topic
Sure.
to what we're talking about
We can,
today. But there's
open
this
mic
kind
here.
of seismic thing that happened in the Star Tribune in the last couple of weeks where they did a very deep look into the safety of our transit system. And I just want to note that here because it is a huge discussion that's going on parallel to what we're talking about. And I hope we have some capacity to take that in at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, Ms. Paddock, and we can certainly, we want to discuss anything that members have here. And in fact, just as we conclude here, and I want to tee up the next meeting, Mayor Hovland, so I just want to say, if you have specific topics that you want here coming up on our next series of meetings as we kind of wrap things up and get into kind of more discussion of structure, please contact me or Ms. Kohler, because, this is, we want members to be able to bring their issues to the task force, and many of you have. So, for example, next week, I think we're going to hear Mayor Hovland wanted the former mayor of Portland to testify remotely because Mayor Hovland thought he had some insights into their model. So, he came to us with that. We'll do that. Same with your suggestion, Ms. Paddock. And I did want to just announce, for those who are interested, the House Transportation Committee is going to have a hearing very specifically on this on December 12th. And we had planned this hearing many months ago, even before the Star Tribune series of articles happened. So, again, this is an example of a big public issue that the Met Council is involved with, and how are just, what structures can we look at to address big, timely, current public issues. So it's certainly a valid point and a case study that we could look at. But did want to let you know, I don't know the exact details yet, but well, I'm sure we have a room and a time, but I don't know them offhand. But I know that December 12th, and we will have a House Transportation Committee exclusively focused on transit safety. So with that, members, we had 3 weeks where we didn't have a meeting, but now we're having a few coming up before our holiday break. And so next week, we're going to delve into a little bit more sort of a follow-up to that vision and mission discussion that we had earlier, which I thought was very productive, so the task force can get into that. We didn't really have a chance today to sort of talk about COGS as a group, so we can certainly do that next time on December 6th. But the bulk of that meeting will be around, again, looking at what is the issues, what are the set of issues that we're trying to solve here as a group as it relates to regional governance. So, be prepared with your ideas with that, and that's what we'll be spending the bulk of our meeting on December 6th.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Mayor Hovland.
Yeah, thank you. For that meeting on the 6th, I was thinking of Charlie Hales, who was going to be with us, the former mayor of Portland, to comment his observations on their form of COG, if you will.
Yeah.
And then as we were working today and listening to Denver, I've got the contact information to Michael Hancock, who just finished being mayor of Denver, may have some input for us on his perceptions on their COG.
Potentially,
as a freshly
it's good to
departed
get-
public
yeah,
official.
if that's okay.
Maybe
Mayor
valuable to-
Hickenlooper as
So
well.
I'll reach out to him.
Okay. Okay, well, good. Again, example of members bringing his stuff to us. We appreciate that, Mayor Hovland. With that, we are adjourned.